So everyone talks about the famous whiskies, your Redbreasts, your Macallans, your Lafroigs, but I think there are a bunch of whiskies that punch way above their weight, that are underrated and genuinely better value. Here are 7 of some of the best whiskies in my collection that I think punch way above their weight, and I don't know why they don't get more attention. Want to try something a little bit different? This is the video to watch. So hit like, hit subscribe, and make yourself comfy. Come on in. Okay, the first on this list might be probably the best value kind of single malt whiskey I've got recently. I talked about it in my affordable whiskey kind of list. This is not cheap whiskies. They're good value just for the money. And it is from a distillery I absolutely love. It is this here, the Deanston Virgin Oak, 46.3%. This has kind of become my like flexible whiskey. It's like cheap enough that if it's a hot day, especially us in New Zealand as we're going into summer now, I'll put it in a cocktail, I'll put it in old fashioned, or I just want to have something neat. Not really feeling the sherry casks, not really feeling like the peated whiskies. You know, I just want something light, bright. And with this being virgin oak, so you get a lot more influence from the wood. You know, the name of the channel, First Fill, right? The first time you put whiskey into a barrel. Well, this is going into virgin oak. So it's not even an ex-bourbon cask. It's like a new cask. And we don't see that much with Scotch because barley is kind of quite sensitive to like new oak and tannins and stuff. So that's why we like to age it in barrels with ex-bourbon that's been in it or ex-sherry. And the thing is, I find virgin oak can be kind of risky because I feel like every time, this is Scotch, I mean, bourbon's different. I mean, corn can stand up to virgin oak. Barley, yeah, it's tough. And so it means that some of the virgin oak whiskies I've had before kind of taste like I've licked a park bench. Not this though. They seem to have got the balance right. They've got the extra vanillas, the creaminess. It's like sort of creme brulee, white chocolate with your classic white fruits, maltiness you get from Dean. It works really well. But the next whiskey might shock you. It's kind of a whiskey that I think punches above its weight. It's underrated. I haven't heard many people talk about it. And it's from Ireland. So some of you might have watched the live stream where I was kind of a mess. My mother passed recently and she was from Belfast. And I thought, well, I want to get something from Belfast. This whiskey, I feel like just kind of made the most sense. It's a distillery which has been revived and it's in the heart of Belfast. It's called the McConnells. And I sort of bought it, not even really researching if it's good or not. So there's a couple of things really interesting about this. First of all, look, it's only 5 years old. But I don't really think, like, I've had a lot of 5-year-old whiskies. Doesn't taste like a 5-year-old. The other thing that's interesting, so if you think about Scotch, right? Scotch whiskey, Irish whiskey, you know, there's a big debate about whether the E is in the word or not. But there's always exceptions, and that's why you can't, like, make broad kind of statements. It's like Maker's Mark not having the E. This is kind of like that. This is an Irish whiskey where they don't use the E, and apparently, historically, they didn't use the E. No E in it. So this one's finished in sherry casks. Yeah, there's like rich berries. It's not like super syrupy like some sherried whiskies. It's not a bomb. It's still young overall though, but I think for the price, underrated. This next whiskey though is not so subtle. It is very, very meaty. So the next whiskey on this list is actually something from Diageo and it's 43%, but probably one of my favorite 43% whiskies. It's very meaty and heavy. It uses worm tubs, not quite as intense as say a Craigellachie. Yeah, I don't think it gets a lot of attention. I mean, actually I'd say out of Diageo's brands, I just wish they had like official bottlings like they have for Lagavulin or Talisker for this brand, because I'd love to see them play with the spirit. So what is it? It's going to be the Benrinnes 15. This here is one of the most savory drams I think you can get. It's just slightly different from your typical light and fruity. The rich and spice is kind of still there, but there's like this sulfur note. This is kind of the whiskey that like the nerds kind of whisper about. Oh, have you tried Benrinnes? I think it's Benrinnes. Is that how you pronounce it? You know, everyone kind of really likes it. We wish we could have more of it. In fact, actually what I would say, some of the independent bottlings of Benrinnes, fantastic. What I like about this is it just has that little bit of sulfur. It's not like heaps, just a little bit of touch, you know, sprinkled on the top. You know, sometimes you're in different moods for different whiskies, right? If you're feeling like you've got a really big sweet tooth and you want something super sweet, you know, that's when maybe a bourbon or something. But if you're just in a savory mood, you want to have chips and dip or something, a sausage roll, That's what this is. The next whiskey is actually not from Scotland, but also pretty available. I find most people can get this, and I think it's hugely underrated and probably my favorite from their range. So this next whiskey and the distillery it's from Australia, but I think this bottle kind of punches above its weight. And the good thing about it is you can actually get it in most places. What is it? It is the Starward Octave barrel. I find sometimes the wine casks can be kind of a bit sort of hit and miss. Sometimes the overly sulfury notes, but on a good way. And that's why, you know, when I talked about how whiskey is made with raw
sweetness, and then a char, which will act as a filtration point and give you loads of natural colour.
That's why STR casks are such a big thing, because you can control that. Whereas when you put whiskey into a wine cask, it's just, there's some absolutely fantastic ones, especially if you're like bigger and meatier and heavier, something like a Loch Rioja. But there's a lot that just don't really click for me. And saying that, this one, so this whiskey here is actually aged in a Barossa Shiraz. So if you know anything about wine, the Barossa Valley is like one of the most famous wine regions of Australia. And somehow, I feel like they made this work. Yeah, it's nice. It's really good. There's this nice caramel sort of note. You've got the spice almost of the Shiraz, the red fruits, but it's not red fruits in the same way as like some of the sherry cask whiskies. It's like a spicier red fruit, almost kind of how with bourbons that are high rye bourbons, bringing in more of that spice. It's kind of like that version for single malts. But speaking of wine casks and stuff and STR casks, there's one whiskey that's probably my favorite STR cask whiskey of all of them. So this whiskey is from a distillery I actually went to. This is from the Cotswolds distillery. I went there, I did that How Whiskey is Made video. I feel like it's a really good representation of the distillery, its cask strength. They just show how well STR casks can be implemented, which is shaved, toasted, and recharred. But this one here has often been compared to whiskies like Glendronach, like big sherry cask whiskies, but for half the price. So it is the Cotswolds Founders Reserve. My one is bottled at 59.1%, but it does definitely still fit in that kind of rich and spice category, especially in the dark, the chocolate, the caramel, the coffee, and then some of those dried fruits as well. I think Cotswolds is a very fruit-forward distillery. It's almost kind of like the Arran of England in some ways. Oh, it's lovely. The aftertaste just has this like really nice sweetness, like a sort of a syrupy sweetness, like almost like a passion fruit syrup. This is a very elegant whiskey, a very beautiful whiskey, I find. And nothing's kind of like punching you in the face. I mean, it's high ABV, but it feels very refined. The fruit, the complexity. Like, I feel like if you're one of those people who like, you're a bit skeptical about STR casks, I mean, this is the one to try. So it's really hard to beat a Cotswolds STR cask whiskey, except for one I had recently. There was a guy who came over. He's one of my patrons. He's from the US. And I was like, and he said, look, is there anything I can bring you that you can't normally get? And I said, well, you tell me. You bring over what you think's good. And he brought over this next whiskey. Now, there's a huge rising scene of single malts coming out of the US these days. And this is one of my absolute favorites. What I've found is this whiskey seems to be the one that, you know, there's certain people who only drink Scotch and they'll never touch a bourbon, and some people only drink bourbon and never will touch a Scotch, right? This is one of the only whiskies that I have two people who are kind of equally in their lane and don't like to cross over. This is probably one of the best bridges between bourbon and Scotch. It is a single malt though, it's malted barley, but I think it brings in some of the sweetness and elements. I don't know why. Actually, I don't know why. A lot of bourbon drinkers like this too. I guess it's American. And it's different, right? The climate, how it's aged. And this one is the Westward cask strength and 125 proof, 62.5%. So a very punchy whiskey. This is a really sort of close kind of rival to the Cotswolds Founders cask. Maybe I should do a side by side actually. I don't actually know which one I like better. Let's find out. So on the nose. Okay, yep. So the big difference between this and the Cotswolds is I find Cotswolds a little bit more in that like plum red fruit. This is like, in New Zealand we have these little lollies called Jaffas. It's like a orange chocolate thing. I don't know what you have in your countries. Write it down in the comments. What's your like orange flavored chocolate? That's kind of what this is. There's honey there. There's like some maple syrup, a nectarine. I would say sweeter than the Cotswolds. And maybe this is where it's kind of been something that's a great introduction to single malt for bourbon lovers. But now we're moving on to two of my absolute favorite whiskies that I think punch way above their weight. Some of you might not even heard of one of them. And I think a lot of you might be surprised about what I've picked here. This might be the coolest thing on my shelf. And whenever someone like comes in and they like see the collection and stuff, this is always the first thing they ask about. They're like, what is that? Like, it looks awesome. Well, I'm going to tell you. What I find, especially talking to thousands of different whiskey lovers, is a lot of whiskey lovers stick to what they know. You know, Scotch drinkers, they stick to Scotch. Bourbon drinkers stick to bourbon. You know, there's no barriers for me. I want to explore around the world. And if you're watching this, you're probably someone who's curious about whiskey, and that's exactly who this is for. So this is the whiskey tour of the world. It's 24 hand-picked whiskies, and these aren't just random bottles. They've been curated to represent the very best of whiskey from each country. And a lot of them have won awards at the highest level, and it's just so cool. German whiskey, Australian whiskey, Peru, styles and profiles you didn't even know existed, and then like they have this like nice guidebook too. So good. For the rest of like this section, I'm just going to drink some Icelandic whiskey. Have you had Icelandic whiskey? Have you? You'll taste things that you didn't realize whiskey could be. It's just so different. So different. And I think there's 24 of these. This is just a great way to explore world whiskies you normally wouldn't be able to try. So if you're curious about whiskey or you just want like the ultimate gift idea, this is just like the ultimate thing. Thanks to the Whiskey Tour of the World for sponsoring this video. Click the link in the description and let's get back to it. Now we're going to get to my number one whiskey I think is super underrated. I don't know why people are not talking about this. But before we get there, I'm going to talk about a special mention. I don't think it will be underrated for very long. I think at the moment, because it's a new distillery, it feels a bit underrated. Some people have tried it, some haven't, but it's from a very probably fairly rated or even overrated region of Scotland. They also use worm tubs. It's a heavy whiskey. It's meaty. It's smoky. And if you haven't guessed it yet, it is the Arnaho. This one here is the Infinite Loch. So I think like a lot of people have tried the inaugural one, but not many have tried the Infinite Loch. It's definitely young, but the smoke there, it's heavy, it's big, no artificial coloring, no chill filtration. You know what's interesting? I feel like my favorite distilleries now, like peaty whiskies. I feel like the trinity of peated whiskey back in the day was, like when I was getting into it, Lafroig, Ardbeg, and Lagavulin. And now I feel like it's Arnaho, Kilchoman, and Lag. Yeah, crazy. It's cool to see these young distilleries, they come in quality focused, like doing stuff like worm tubs or Kilchoman using barley farms from around the distillery. Lag making something that by its nature is heavy, big, and bold. Like this is not a whiskey aimed at the average whiskey drinker. This is aimed at people who want something big and bold. So what I like is like, they're all flavor first distilleries. But let's get on to probably what I think is one of the whiskies that punch way above their weight, really good value. I don't know why more people are not talking about this whiskey. So this one's actually from Campbeltown. It's known for that heavy funk. It's got a little bit of smoke, not heaps, a little bit of sherry, not heaps. I feel like in like a flavor map, that's kind of like in the center, just a fascinating whiskey. And I got this for a very, very good price here in New Zealand. I'd love to hear what you can get it for, but I just don't think it's talked about enough. However, this is not from an individual distillery. This is from an independent bottler. And the independent bottler for this is called Douglas Lang. So it's been a while since I talked about Douglas Lang. And I feel like on my channel, I don't talk enough about independent bottlers because by their nature, a lot of the whiskies are the individual, they're bespoke. So if I talked about one, 99% of you won't be able to get it. And that's by design. This one though is a blended malt. So it's still only malted whiskey, but it's a blend of different single malts. It's a bit more of a standard release. You can find this around. And that is Gauldrons. 46.2%. It's non-chill filtered, no added colouring, and it's got everything you want in a Campbeltown for a very good price. I don't know why people are not talking about this. This punches way above its weight. So what I like about this is it brings in that kind of like rounded complexity of a Glen Scotia, and it just has that undertone of funk, which I assume is either Kilkerran or Springbank. Yes, it has that really nice peppery bit of peat coming through, and just for such a good price. Go exploring. A big part of this channel is exploring. That's what the logo and the first fill thing, the catch lot, sperm whale, dives deep. That's what it's all about, and that's part of the adventure. And that's what I love about whiskey. We're exploring. But I want to hear from you. What are some whiskies that punch above their weight, underrated? I'm not saying cheap, but decent value for you. I'd love to hear a comment down below. But beyond that. So find people you can sit down, have some whiskies with in a world where we're like, I don't know, we're all scrolling, and grab your friends, invite them around, have some drams. That's what it's all about. Above all, explore, share and enjoy. Beauty.